for sure. And, it did fall apart. It came unglued. It's not easy to be a
Yeah.
head coach. But he's not coming in here as a head coach. He's coming here to do what he does well, which is run an offense and develop a QB.
Pop, what's going on, man?
Son,
What a day. What a day. Things are getting weird. Things are getting wild. We recorded an entire podcast this morning. You'll hear some of it later on for all our Super Bowl talk and stuff
scrapping
like that.
it.
But there it goes. I was sitting in the kitchen, man. I made some sauce. I was tasting the sugo. It was about 4:30. I said, I miss having football on, but being done with the podcast, edited, ready to upload at 4 o'clock, and I can just chill for the rest of the day, not the worst thing in the world. And then, boom, notification, Ian Rappaport, boom, Adam Schefter, boom, JP Finley, Kliff Kingsbury hired offensive coordinator for the Washington Commanders. Pop, your thoughts, your feelings, take it away.
Well, my first thoughts as we were sitting here, getting ready to get back on was the disappointment that some had around not hiring an offensive-minded head coach. But how do you feel about the combination of Dan Quinn and Kliff Kingsbury now? That's a pretty dynamic duo to have coaching our team. I'm pretty excited about it. I think, with the background that Kingsbury brings and his ability to develop quarterbacks. And yeah, things kind of flamed out, in
Arizona.
Arizona. Geez, it's when you record two podcasts, man. But I wanted to
Burn
say
it out.
Phoenix. I knew that was wrong, but things kind of flamed out in Arizona. But he had top offenses there, and we just spent the pod, which you won't see, breaking down all the potential offensive coordinator candidates. Why don't you tell the people? Why don't you give the people a little Dommy scouting report? Put you on the spot on Kliff Kingsbury.
All right, so we're going a little off the top here, going emergency podcast style. Obviously, his calling card, what got him NFL attention was working with Pat Mahomes at Texas Tech. Johnny Manziel, also somebody that he worked with at the collegiate level, and Case Keenum as well. Those are kind of the big names surrounding him in terms of quarterback development, which seems to be the big thing that people really like about Kliff Kingsbury. He was brought in to Arizona with the number 1 overall pick to develop Kyler Murray. Didn't quite work out there. Jury's out on Kyler. Kyler got hurt. The locker room was a mess in Arizona. He was not that his leadership style did not translate to the league, I think. And he wasn't quite that kind of guy that can command a locker room. But he is now coming to Washington, just in charge of X's and O's, being the offensive coordinator, calling the plays, of course. It should be interesting. He's known for an air raid offense. He is known for, at the collegiate level, at least his teams usually trail in time of possession because he's flinging the ball around the yard. So that's just kind of an interesting nugget there.
Right.
Same with Chip Kelly is also a play there. And a big thing that I skipped there, the most recent title is a senior offensive assistant at USC, working very closely with none other than Caleb Williams. So things are about to get interesting.
Yeah, no, and I think he was a quarterback at Texas Tech prior to that and had tremendous amount of success. So I know the thing about his time in Arizona for a while there, it was looking pretty darn good, right?
They were
I
the
mean, they
best
were
team in the
cooking.
league for a while. Yeah,
They were cooking. So offensively, I don't know, best team in the league, but offensively, they were a dynamic offense, and things kind of started to fall apart. I think maybe it was a scenario where there was too much focus on the offense and he wasn't able to focus enough on the entire team. I guess if there's a concern that some people might bring to the table, it's the fact that you're right, he's a pass first guy. But I think that's the great thing about the situation is him, Dan Quinn, Adam Peters can all be on the same page about the team they want to design, right?
Yeah.
And you talked about the Caleb Williams connection. He's Caleb Williams, for the most part, his position coach at last season or
Yep.
so, right? And so there's a connection there. But also, a Jaden Daniels could be very successful in that type of offense because look at, Kyler Murray picking up 800 yards one of those seasons, playing for Kliff Kingsbury. So I think it's an opportunity. It wasn't so much that the pass first offense that EB was running were all against. It didn't match the experience level of the quarterback and the talent level that the team have. Now, if you're going to design an offense that, and you're going to design talent level and you're going to structure a team to achieve those goals, I think you can have some success doing it. It'll be interesting. If I have one reservation, it might be that, but also who knows? Maybe he can make some adjustments. I thought, if you don't mind, I thought some of these quotes off of Twitter were pretty good.
Go for it.
I thought JP Finley had a really good one. He says he likes the Kingsbury move. Young guy that will devote the time to a young quarterback, Jaden or Caleb or whoever. And for those who are worried about losing the OC, Kliff probably needs to prove it for a few seasons before he gets another shot at a head
Yeah.
coaching job. So it's someone that probably will have to be in that role and prove himself for a couple 3 years and can really focus what he's good at versus trying to be a head coach. Even Adam Schefter said, "Let the speculation begin." Kliff Kingsbury coached Caleb Williams last season. So, he talks about Williams being from Gonzaga High School here in Washington, D.C., and the fact that, we've got some draft capital to be able to move up and pick him if we need to. So, a couple of interesting developments there. And it was also a really big tell when Kingsbury pulled out of the Raiders job. That seemed like a done deal. We thought,
Yeah.
okay, it's not going to be him. And, I thought that was a pretty strong tell. When we were recording the Never to Be Seen Again podcast earlier today, I mentioned that. I said, this Kingsbury thing seems like it's got legs because why would he, turn down the Raiders job if he didn't really feel confident that he was going to get this one? And it turns out to be true. You'll never hear Pop say that, but Dominic can vouch for me. I talked about that earlier in the day. So, yeah, it's exciting. I mean, you never know how these things are going to work out. But, I think, like I said, that combination of now Quinn and Kingsbury, how you feeling, it puts a little bit different vibe on this whole situation, I think.
Yeah. The Cardinals started out, by the way, with Kliff Kingsbury in 2021. They started out 7-0. They ended up 10-2 through 12 weeks, and then they kind of lost
Tailed a
out.
bit.
They kind of
Yeah.
they lost steam, and then they ended up losing to the then Super Bowl champions, the Rams, in the wild card that year. But yeah, all great points around. I think the point of Kliff Kingsbury probably having to stay in Washington for at least a couple years, maybe longer. I wonder, with him, if it's going to be a case of, hey, this guy's just not a head coach. He's an OC. I wonder if some kind of consensus like that. Obviously, if we get Caleb Williams and he lights the world on fire, you got to imagine that Kliff Kingsbury is going to be the hot head coaching commodity at that point. But I think generally, in my opinion, thinking about all that kind of stuff is so. We were 4-13 last year. I
Yeah.
would love to have that problem.
I was going
I
to
can't
just say
wait
that.
to have that problem. I think generally, and
It's,
I've kind of kept that opinion to myself over the last few pods because I just prefer to talk about things that are actually happening, and we've kind of stayed away from talking about that. But I think we both feel that way. It's just, who cares? Who cares if we get to that point? I'm happy that we're
that'd
there.
be fantastic. I mean, if we have the level of success as an offensive team, especially understanding the type of defense that Dan Quinn can build, that'd be a great problem to have to lose
Yeah,
Kingsbury to a head coaching job. And I think I disagree with you a little bit. He had enough success in Arizona that I think if he has, if he cooks here and he does really well, which is a big if, we
Yeah.
we talked earlier. This is a big rebuild situation, and one of the things we checked in on was how do we feel about Dan Quinn, and one of the things that we talked about. Sorry to recap something y'all aren't going to see, but is the fact that at the end of the day, I think that this situation in this organization, maybe the situation that happened with Ben Johnson and we landed on Dan Quinn, is really going to be a blessing in disguise. Because if you really zoom back and think about it a little bit, we need that experienced guy, right? This is a rebuild. This is not for the faint of heart. This roster has to be reconstructed. This team has to be rebuilt. This culture has to be rebuilt. I mean, Doug Williams was on with Doc Walker earlier today, and really he had some pretty powerful things to say if you didn't hear that. And he talked about the lack of a good culture in that building, which he's in for the last few years, right? He said there was
Yeah.
all this talk about culture. I didn't see it, right? So it's establishing that winning culture. So this is a major restructure. And if they're able to be successful with it, like you said, that's a good problem to have. I'm not going to worry about losing a guy who's successful to something else. What that also tells you, though, is that if he ends up leaving for another head coaching job, that means this young quarterback that he's developed
Is a
has done
stud.
really well. So those are going to
Yeah.
be great problems to have. I think one of the most important things for this coaching staff is having a succession plan,
Yeah.
right? Being, making sure that he's got somebody underneath him that can take over the reins if we get to that point. But I think that's 2, 3 years down the road at best, assuming it's all successful. We're really getting way ahead of ourselves with that, right?
Yeah.
You know?
And something to note too, the ownership situation in Arizona is no bueno. Not good. They got a Snyder-esque fella in charge of that organization, and that organization in general is just one of the poorer front offices in the NFL. So it's just something to keep in mind because he did well enough in 2021 that they actually signed him in 2022 to an extension to run through 2027. So he's still on their payroll.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. There was a
and he will
period of
be for a
time there for
while.
sure where him and Murray were, it looked like the new,
The future.
the new thing in the league for sure. And it did fall apart. It came unglued. It's not easy to be a
Yeah.
head coach, but he's not coming in here as a head coach. He's coming here to do what he does well, which is run an offense and develop a QB. And I
And
think if you think of the options that were out there, we were debating this earlier about whether or not we wanted an experienced guy or one of these younger, quarterback coach guys. And I personally would prefer to have somebody that's called plays in the NFL before,
yeah.
right? To not take this flyer on, the last two offensive coordinators that we've had, EB and Turner, was their first time really calling plays in the NFL full time, where it was totally their gig, owning it, playing for a defensive head coach. I don't want that this time around. I want to have somebody that's had success, and also just because he ran the kind of offense he ran, in Arizona with Murray doesn't mean he's going to run the exact same type of offense here. He's got a strong head coach.
Yeah.
Quinn says, "Hey, I want to establish the run more." He's going to have to make adjustments and do that. And I would imagine he's capable of doing that. So, um, I think everything that I'm seeing, just um, local folks. I mean, it's pretty unanimous in folks saying that they think it's a great hire. Rick Snyder, Grant Paulson, Linnell Willingham, like everybody's just chiming in saying they think it's a really good hire. So,
Yeah,
um,
including
you know,
Jahan Dotson.
gotta like
Jahan
that.
Dotson is happy. I think I saw Brian Robinson Jr. also. Yeah, 3 fire emojis. Jahan Dotson tweeted super tough with a crying emoji and an exclamation point. So I think it's some new blood in that offensive locker room. This is officially peace to Eric Bieniemy. Thank you for your contributions.
Yeah,
Hope you're successful Elsewhere, if we need a running backs coach, I'd love to keep him in the building.
Running
But
backs coach.
that's what he did before he was OC in Kansas City. He was a running backs coach. He played running back.
I know he did. He was a good running back. He didn't play. He didn't call
He
plays
didn't
like
run
he
the ball
played
at
running
all, man.
back.
No. It is ironic. It's incredibly ironic. It's like Ron
I
Rivera being a linebacker and not having a good linebacker ever in BC.
yeah. I mean,
Um,
on the EB topic, because obviously I think it's gonna. We're gonna part ways there. It's possible that he could have a good year too. It's possible that he can learn from this experience, come out of it, and be a really good OC
yeah,
in a different situation. I don't think the story is completely written there. But it was a major fail last year, as we've talked about many times, and unfortunately, there's no way that was going to work. I mean, that was obvious. It would never seem to be seriously in play, but I wish him well, and I don't think it's impossible. I'm not going to write EB off. It just needs to happen somewhere else, obviously.
you want my money on EB? What's gonna happen? I think,
KC,
I think in about 3 weeks we're gonna get a notification that he has been hired as the pass game coordinator in Kansas City, and he's gonna go play under Matt
very
Nagy. He's
possible.
gonna go back. I think he's gonna end up back there. I think unless the reports of the relationship really being fractured there are true, which I don't think they are, they were better with him offensively. He clearly brought something there that they've lacked this year. And he's clearly not an offensive coordinator at this point in his career. So I think we'll see something like that happen. Um, but yeah, he gave it his best here. Was always a class act. Always carried himself in a great way. On the football side of things, I'd be lying if I said I'm not a little bit excited that this is the last time we'll talk about it. I'm
Yeah.
ready. I'm ready for a change. I'm
Well, we
ready.
talked about it at the end of the season. It's just one of those situations. It doesn't mean I bet you there are a lot of really good coaches on that coaching staff,
Yeah.
but you got to do a reset. It's got to be a complete reset. And Adam Peters and Quinn got to get their group in here. And I think there needs to be, maybe a couple of folks there survive. There are some good people. Sometimes that happens, but the big names, the Jack Del Rios, the Eric Bieniemys, of course, the Ron Riveras. It's just they needed to go.
Yep.
The thing about EB is he's assistant head coach, right? He was as big an influence. People tried to back off that later in the season, but throughout the course of the year, through training camp, he ran the practice schedule. There were a lot of things that changed to do things the way he wanted to do it, and it didn't work out. But I
So
think
much so, so much so that there was talk about, oh, do we let Rivera go mid-season? And they said, it's worthless to do this because EB is already running the show, essentially. Um, but yeah, enough on EB. Just got to touch on that, given that he's no longer going to be in position here. But yeah, got to be excited about Kingsbury, where this thing is headed. I was in the Chip Kelly camp. I'll be honest. If we had to go back and tap into the well, I was in the Chip Kelly camp.
something about Chip Kelly's face. Something
I
about his
said it on
face.
tape. I said it on the last pod. I like his running the ball a little bit more. He tends to run the ball a bit
Right.
more than Kingsbury, at least. That's the one thing I'm really concerned about is just like, are we going to repeat? Is this going to be Einstein's definition of
That's
insanity?
fair.
Are we going to go get a young quarterback and just make him pass the ball 50 times a game? That's what I'm concerned about. But
But wasn't there a lot of RPO
maybe,
there? Like, I mean, or wasn't there a lot
yeah,
of not even RPO, but
design quarterback runs.
yeah, design quarterback runs and
Murray ran for 800 yards one year.
yeah. So I think it's a little different, right? It's
Yeah,
it's leveraging quarterback, which has its pros and cons. Those are legitimate concerns, but maybe the other part of that argument is to argue that he did that because that he was playing to Kyler Murray's strengths. Clearly,
yeah,
he's designed an offense to do what Kyler Murray does well, right?
yeah, sure.
So
The air raid
you know,
offense in general, the title speaks for itself.
right?
But we're gonna see it. I tell you what, there's gonna be a lot of passing. It's gonna be an exciting offense to watch. Whether it'll be good, time will tell. There's no way to know. But it's an interesting situation with Kliff Kingsbury. You know, the some of the off the field reports and stuff like that are kind of funny. Nothing serious, of course, just seems to be a bit of a character. But I think what you said was great. I think having Dan Quinn as the leader and the overarching umbrella over all of this, I think he will kind of keep everybody where they're supposed to be. And we let this guy who's kind of a mad scientist just go be a mad scientist in your corner over there. I'm going to handle the locker room. I'm going to take care of getting the players fired up. I'm going to handle the press conferences. You're going to make sure that we have the right routes being ran against the right coverages, and we're all going to be happy. I
Yeah,
think
and
there's a world where that works out very nicely.
well, but also I think that the thing is, if you're going to argue around, Kingsbury versus, um, anyone else, I mean, Kingsbury's humbled himself, right?
Definitely.
He became a college offensive assistant, right? Not even a offensive coordinator, but like an assistant type quarterback coach type. A Chip
Yeah.
Kelly is used to being the top dog. I just worried
Head coach
about
at
Chip Kelly
UCLA.
that it would be not another EB. I mean, he went from head coach at Oregon to head coach at the Eagles to head coach at the 49ers to head coach at UCLA. This guy's not an assistant coach. Now he maybe he's willing to take that step back and be an offensive coordinator, but I think that Kliff Kingsbury just appears to be much more willing and maybe even excited about the ideas. I just get in the lab and coach my offense. That's what
Yep.
I got to do. I don't want to deal with all this other stuff, and I don't need to be the one, that is out front, right? Where I struggle to see Chip Kelly in that kind of role for very
That's a
long.
that's a really good point. I think when you talk in terms of like personalities and that kind of thing, I think that makes sense. And I think who knows? I mean, we don't know any of these guys. We haven't sat down and had conversations with any of them, but I think you're right in that Kliff Kingsbury's actions kind of show that he's more interested in just staying on the offensive side of the ball, doing what he likes to do. And obviously, he took the job as an OC. He's clearly willing to be number two. And you don't take the job as an OC behind a guy like Dan Quinn unless you are willing to give up that alpha role, so to speak.
Exactly.
Which maybe that would have been the issue with because there's no look when you're in a room with Dan Quinn, there's no mistaking who's running the show in that room,
Well,
right?
I'm
There's
pretty
no
sure.
debate.
I'm pretty sure with the success Kingsbury had at Texas Tech, and the fact that he was an NFL head coach, he could have got a head coaching job somewhere in college,
Yeah.
right? So, I think that is, um, something that I think that you could expect. So, but I mean, if we're gonna put a bow on this from my perspective, and I'll let you have the last word on it. I definitely understand the concerns about the type of offense that he's going to run. I think that's fair. I think, you know, but I think at the end of the day, what was big for me, and there were limited good options out there. I wanted somebody that was experienced at calling plays in the NFL. And I think the opportunity to get somebody like that not only, that did it and did it very, very well for a period of time, and hopefully learn from that, and hopefully can bring a bit more balance in how he runs things here in terms of doing what's best for the talent that he has versus just coming in and doing an air raid offense for the sake of it. But I also think, like I said earlier, it's an opportunity for him to collaborate with Peters and Quinn and really have a vision and have an
Yeah.
idea of what they want to do. Pick the right quarterback to execute that plan. Make sure they invest in the right offensive weapons and offensive line to get that done. And I think that's what's exciting about this.
Yep, well said. And I think too, we talked a little bit about this is my final thought on this whole thing because I think you've pretty much said everything else. Is just a point that came to my head. Is we talked a little bit about Dan Quinn and wanting him to focus exclusively on the defense. We both expressed that we want him to be the play caller, and we want him to be really like almost like 95-5 split in terms of what he's thinking about offensive defensive, right? Almost like I even said in the podcast that will never be heard, I would even be in favor of not hiring a defensive coordinator and just letting him be the DC and getting a defensive assistant of some sort, similar to how Shanahan does it in San Francisco, where he's the offensive coordinator, but he has an offensive assistant. Same thing, other side of the ball. And I think Kingsbury, being a former head coach, perhaps can free up a little bit of that bandwidth for Quinn as well if they're able to develop a rapport and a trust and the locker room kind of seems to gel in the right way. There's potential for that to work out in a cool way. Anyways, we ran like I think 15 minutes over what we planned on recording
Do you
for.
think that
So
podcast will come out in the future, like when we're just rich and famous, like lost tracks of the Beatles or Van Halen or
it'll get
something, you
leaked.
know?
Yeah, maybe the hackers come get it. Anyways, let's get into that Super Bowl, man. Big, big times. We're gonna save our predictions for the middle of the week, but where's the vibe check at right now for the Super Bowl? San Francisco's a 2.5 point favorite. Got some Kelsey, Taylor Swift news, all that stuff. We got a lot to get into here, but we're gonna kind of try and go through it kind of quickly. Pop, how stoked are you for Super Bowl Sunday, man?
It's interesting. I haven't really thought a lot about it. I guess we are just
Yeah,
so consumed with what's going on here with the Commanders that it really hasn't been something that I've thought about too much. But it should, kick into gear this week. Is really, I was expecting to get your Pro Bowl flag football game sauce award. So I'm surprised you didn't interject that in there. Um,
uh,
but yeah, I mean, it's just it's interesting. I think quick takes, the obvious takes. When you look at it, it's pretty interesting that San Francisco's a 2.5 point favorite. That is interesting.
yeah.
Um, I guess
Wasn't
they've
Philly the
been.
favorite last year?
I don't remember.
I think I remember Philly being the favorite. Continue. Sorry.
Yeah, love when you throw those questions at me. Like I'm gonna. Yeah, I don't. I can't tell you what I have for breakfast this morning. I'm gonna remember
Every
who was
once in a
favored.
while, you catch something. I try to believe in my pot. God forbid.
But it's interesting. I mean, you just the obvious one is right. The battle of those two quarterbacks, Mahomes versus Purdy. You just hard to say that one guy's going to come out on top of the other, and feel like the bit of the disrespect towards the um, the Chiefs continues.
Yeah, I kind of agree with you on that. I just think I don't know how at a certain point you don't uh you don't favor Patrick Mahomes in the Super Bowl. Tom Brady's not on the other side of the football this time. How do you not favor Patrick Mahomes? I just don't get it. I'm certainly pro Mahomes here personally.
Yeah,
I think
tipping
that's
your hand
very
there.
very clearly the guy that you root for in this. Well, maybe not root for. I know some people feel differently, but definitely the guy that you got to predict here, especially if you're getting 2.5 points. We'll see how the line moves between now and when we record our pod,
Could
but
be a heck of
that's
a
my early
game.
feeling
I
on
mean,
that.
I got the vibe that it's not going to be a blowout. That it's going to be a battle.
Yeah, I think so.
Two competitive teams, lots of talent across the board. You could argue that there's, you know, Mahomes and Kelsey kind of tipped the scale. The way the Chiefs defense was playing kind of tips the scale. But if you took Mahomes out of it and you went talent for talent, roster for roster, that Frisco roster is arguably more talented. So
Yeah,
I think it's going to be a battle. Could be a really good one. Could be a really good one.
yeah. I mean, it's hard to say Mahomes and Kelsey tip the scale. I think Mahomes and Kelsey probably even out the scale because you have, I mean, George
That's what I
Kittle,
meant to
Debo
say.
Samuel, Christian
That's what I
McCaffrey,
meant
Fred
to say.
Warner on the other side of the ball, right? You got game breakers in San Francisco.
Yeah,
I know that's what makes it a close game is having Mahomes
yeah,
and Kelsey there.
yeah.
And the late emergence of guys like Rashi Rice, obviously Pacheco, they've been able to run the football really well. That's an interesting
I
thing
mean, I
for me
already had to
going
give
into
you an
this.
English lesson before the pod. Don't
Yeah,
let this start again. All right.
no, no, no. That's a that's an interesting thing for me looking into it is that San Francisco has been not great against the run this year. That's kind of been their weak spot, which is weird to say because they typically have a fantastic run defense, but this year not so much. And Kansas City has kind of been leaning on that run game and their defense to kind of keep them a little more comfortable.
Yeah,
So
it
might tip
bothers
my
me
hand
because
in a little
I'm a
bet, but
big Pacheco fan, and I've gained more and more respect for him throughout the year.
love that guy. Yeah,
Yeah, he doesn't get named enough. That's a great call out by you. He doesn't get
yeah,
the respect that he should get as a real factor for that team. I
he
love the way he
is
runs.
he is so important to that team
Yeah,
because you
yeah.
can't just keep running. Like now they're at a point where you can't just keep running two high safeties and take away over the top all the time because you're taking men out of the box and Pacheco is going to run over somebody. He's going to make somebody miss. And now all of a sudden that run that would be 7, 8 yards is going to turn into 15, 20 by the time your safeties get downhill. It's a different, it changes the way it almost reminds me of in Tennessee. It's like the inverse of when they had Derrick Henry and he was the stud, and then AJ Brown broke out because everybody was crashing down into the box. It's almost the inverse. Like everybody's respecting the pass so much that Pacheco now is keeping them honest on the ground. It reminds me of that kind of balance, and I think to have a great football team, you need that.
Well,
So,
it's a demonstration of what great coaching is because
yep,
really, if you think about the Chiefs, they're not winning with flash this year. They don't have great
yeah,
weapons on offense, um, and especially at receiver. And so, you could see they're winning more with, how did they win that Ravens game? It was they didn't turn the ball over, and the Ravens did. They got
yep,
takeaways. At the end of the day, that was the difference in that game. It wasn't that they completely outplayed them. And so that ball control situation, protecting the football, letting your defense do what they do, they've made those adjustments to,
hmm,
win in a very different way than they've been winning in the past, which was more through high
yeah.
powered offense, right? So
And
got
you've seen
great
Mahomes
coach.
even be able to kick it into a different gear as he's less of the Michael Jordan now and more of like the Chris Paul almost. Like he's not standing on his head and making these incredible plays. He's just not making mistakes. Like he's just
Well,
playing
he does a
so
bit of both.
solid. He does a bit of both. He pulls into that bag of tricks when he needs to, but he is facilitating the ball at we're talking like a prime Peyton Manning, prime Tom Brady level right now. He is just so sharp at where the
Yeah.
ball needs to go and keeping that game plan moving and managing the game. Like he's doing an incredible job of managing the game, which was never something that Pat had to worry about because his talent just took it over the top.
And then
But
on the
now,
49ers side of the ball, maybe to balance things out a little bit, I
yeah,
mean,
yeah,
there's
yeah,
some real interesting stories there. I mean, imagine Brock Purdy winning a Super Bowl. Imagine Kyle getting his first one.
yeah.
There's some real interesting stuff there that, if it went that way, I am not one, it depends who it is, obviously, the team, but I root for greatness. And I think that Pat winning his third would be really cool.
Me too.
So I'm not one that's rooting against that just for the sake of it. Um, and not because, Taylor Swift is Travis Kelsey's, uh, girlfriend. I could
Yeah.
care less about that.
I watch football to be concerned. It's so ironic to me the people that get so upset about I'm watching football to watch football. Well, probably watch the game then. Why are you so concerned about what they're
Who
cutting to in
cares?
between plays? You're not
Yeah, who
missing plays.
cares?
But
I got
yeah,
nothing against Tay Tay.
me neither. I mean, I got a storyline for you that nobody's talking about. How about Brock Purdy having Tommy John surgery in the offseason? Didn't even know if he was going
Nah,
to be
it's
healthy
amazing.
enough to be the starter. I mean, we were this time last year, you and I were saying if Purdy is not 100%, you got to give it back to Trey Lance, and Purdy might not get that job back, right?
Was
This
I
time
saying
last
that?
year, that was the narrative. You and I had conversations regarding that for sure, 100%. You just all of a sudden now you remember what you were talking about. You 2 seconds ago you told me you didn't know what you had for
No, I
breakfast,
don't. I don't remember that
but
conversation at all.
we were talking about you got to give the guy with the elite talent the chance to step up. That's what we were talking about. And now, I mean, Purdy's in the NFL MVP conversation. Obviously, that's Lamar, but was in the conversation for the year and has recovered from that injury that can really end careers. And to play the way that
Yeah.
he's played I think it's nothing
All the
short of
credit in the
incredible.
world. Yeah.
Um, so I'm super excited to watch this game. I think there's so many great storylines. I think it's going to be an absolute blast. And like you said, I think it's two teams that they can come back from behind. They can go blow for blow with each other. I think it's going to be an all time Super Bowl this year. It's going to be a great one.
Yes, sir.
But what do you say with that resounding cosign of enthusiasm for Pop there? What do you say we wrap this thing up,
Have
huh?
you and the Boston Insider figure out a tiebreak? Are you guys all arm wrestling or for
There's
the playoff
we're
bracket challenge?
we're deep in litigation right now trying to figure that one out. We'll get back to you on before our next
It's gonna
pod
be
for
like
sure.
a 40-yard. What are we doing here? Arm wrestling, playing
Yeah, I don't know.
Madden.
It's probably gonna be look, it's probably gonna be a game of Madden that drives us right to the brink of our friendship. And then as if we don't already do that a couple times a week.
All
But
right,
we'll definitely it'll probably come down to Madden would be my guess.
all
But
right. Keep us
what do you say
posted.
we'll keep you posted. I'm waiting to hear back from his legal team. You know, it's a cross country thing. It's all gotta be done over USPS. It takes time. What do you say we wrap this thing up?
Sounds good.
Let's do it. All right. Without further ado, I've been Dom.
This is Pop.
And thanks for another great week, guys.